It was just another quiet night shift. Until one frozen frame stopped Ethan's breath. On the screen, a man beaten to the ground, surrounded by officers, and leading them, was the same man who had once pulled Ethan from the wreckage and saved his life. From that moment, every truth he thought he knew was about to unravel. If you want to follow the twists and turns of stories like this, subscribe now and step with us into the shadows where loyalty meets justice. The control center sat on the 18th floor of an aging office building, facing a river that looked like a strip of black silk. The night rain had been falling just long enough to soak everything. The hallway reeked faintly of old carpet. Ethan Cole's chair let out a metallic sigh every time he shifted, and the wall of screens in front of him glowed the color of aquarium glass. He pressed the coffee cup lid between two fingers, listening to the faint crunch of plastic. The smell of stale coffee mingled with the metallic tang of ozone from the server racks, and it carried him straight back to the hospital nights 7 years ago. Antiseptic fog in the air, sterile light that never warmed, and the strange floating weightlessness of someone who just barely survived. In those nights, his dreams were always shards of glass tumbling through darkness, chiming against each other before disappearing. And in the middle of the sound, there had always been a hand pulling him back from something worse than death. Being unseen. That hand had belonged to Marcus Hawley. On the central monitor, a red warning flared. Signal lost, Central Park. West, 2:14 a.m. It blinked like an open wound. Ethan clicked to enlarge the feed. Rain streaked down. The screen showed nothing but black, like someone had pasted a swatch of night over the lens. He blinked, rolled the footage back, and accessed the backup archive. The data streamed like a clogged gutter suddenly letting go. The server fan spun up, humming behind the wall. He leaned in. First, he listened, an old habit from his college side job repairing computers. Listen before you look. The system's heartbeat was steady, no overload, which meant the camera hadn't failed on its own, which meant someone had touched the software, which meant this was not going to be just another quiet shift. He bit into a limp, oversweet cookie, then opened the hidden partition. A slice of memory that only woke when he typed a password long enough to feel like a spell. The recovered footage came up fractured, pixelated. He nudged the brightness, dialed down the noise. Rain filled the picture, spattering like the wings of a soaked moth. A lamplight glare cut across the wet pavement like a thin knife. And then, movement. 4 dark figures rushed into frame, broad-shouldered, purposeful. One man was shoved to the ground, arms pinned behind his back. Public cameras weren't supposed to record audio, but some fragment had survived in the corrupted file. A ghost sound under the rain. Sneakers slipping. A choked moan like someone with a pillow pressed over their face. Then rain, harder now. As if it too wanted this to end quickly, one of the 4 looked up. The lamplight caught his cheekbone, tracing down to the corner of his eye. Ethan froze the frame, zoomed in, tight mouth. Unblinking eyes. A small scar just under the left ear. He'd seen those markers before, in a framed commendation photo at the precinct, in a parade crowd shot, and most vividly, in his own memory. Marcus Hawley. Ethan's hand tightened on the mouse until his knuckles whitened. 2 Marcuses overlaid. In his mind like misaligned film reels, one bending over a shattered car door, prying metal apart with raw force. The other, in the rain, signaling with a subtle tilt of his head before stomping a man's skull into the pavement. He tried to tell himself, maybe the kid had a weapon. Maybe he just committed a crime. Maybe this was self-defense. But the frame held no weapon. No resistance. Just a young man in a cheap hoodie, face twisted in fear. And 4 familiar shadows wearing badges. Ethan pushed his chair back, scanning the empty control room as if someone had just walked in. No one. Only the damp smell of rain trapped in the carpet and the low electric buzz in the cables, like patient insects. Tonight, the building held just him and a security guard half asleep at the lobby desk. But from the moment he saw it, he knew the room wasn't empty anymore. Something else was here, an unseen third presence, not human, not shadow, a secret. Something with weight, dropped squarely onto his chest. He replayed it, again, again. With each loop, Marcus's face seemed to sink deeper into the glass wall of screens, as if it might spill out onto the floor. Ethan's finger hovered over the capture button. One click and the clip would be saved a story in miniature. But that story would drag another with it, his own. Clicking capture would also be pressing erase on the life he'd been living. Ethan the invisible. Ethan dash who dash kept dash his dash head dash down. Ethan dash who dash let dash things dash slide. Those names had been his coat for years, worn thin at the shoulders but still familiar. A raindrop slid down the outer window pane, clearing a tiny oval of view. Somewhere in the city, lovers were probably texting each other goodnight. Somewhere, two kids lay in the dark making up stories about the monsters in the rain. Somewhere, a woman face gentle as the smell of apple pie was tying her son's shoes by the door. Ethan thought, for no reason he could name, of cinnamon and apples fresh from the oven, of jazz leaking from a fourth-floor apartment on Grove Street, and of a woman's warm smile as she rested her forehead on his shoulder on a worn couch. Her name was Ava. Their love hadn't ended with a fight. It had ended with silent dinners. She'd once told him, "You make a living watching people, without anyone watching you. Aren't you afraid you'll disappear?" He'd smiled. "Some people are only safe if they disappear." She'd looked at him like a chipped mug, sad, but unwilling to fix it. Ava's image flickered through his mind like a shaky video, then vanished. He clicked capture. The sound was soft as a raindrop hitting a wineglass. A copy of The Truth landed in his drive. He checked the checksum, counted 1, 2, 3, until complete lit up. He slipped a thin black external drive from his bag. It looked cut from the night itself, and copied the file into an unnamed folder. While the progress bar crawled, he paced the old wood floor, boards creaking underfoot. In a corner security camera feed, he saw himself, a lean man in a gray hoodie, eyes hollowed by lack of sleep. He also saw something else in that feed, fear, with a shape of its own. When the transfer hit 100%, he pocketed the drive. Outside, the rain thickened. Somewhere down the street, an ambulance wailed past, its sound stretching like an over-tightened guitar string. He turned back to the wall of screens, wiping the logs clean, leaving behind just enough static to make the disappearance look like nothing at all. His email pinged. A company security update. And below it, a message from unknown. Don't keep what isn't yours. People have died for less. No signature, no attachment. The blank white screen stared back like a hospital hallway. A faint scuff of shoes made him glance up. The door slid open an inch. Jason, his alternating shift partner, blonde hair, smile thin as an envelope flap, leaned in. "You good?" Jason asked, voice thick with sleep, reins messing with the cameras. "I'm fine," Ethan said, noticing Jason's eyes flick toward his keyboard where the email still glowed. "I'm grabbing a soda downstairs," Jason yawned. "Want one?" "No." When the door clicked shut, sweat was already cooling on Ethan's neck. Alone again, he felt like he was holding something small and alive and dangerous in trembling hands. By 5 a.m., the rain had thinned to mist. The city was wrapped in a plastic hush, every sound muffled. Ethan powered down, left by the fire stairs. The metal steps were slick, groaning under each footfall. On the landing, a fogged window threw back his reflection, not quite his own. It had been a long time since anyone had looked at him longer than 3 seconds. His apartment was a third-floor walk-up facing a brick wall. In the morning, sunlight slid down the bricks like pale ribbons. On a shelf, an empty porcelain vase. On the table, a book left open mid-page, The City and the City. He slipped the drive into a shoebox under the bed, paused, then thought better of it. Instead, he unzipped an old winter coat, slid the drive into a hand-sewn pocket inside the lining. Warm now, it almost felt like it had a heartbeat. His phone buzzed, unknown number. Don't be stupid. The man who saved you could erase you with a blink. He deleted it. Another came instantly. You owe a life. Don't forget. Instead of replying, he turned on the kitchen tap. The water's hiss was identical to the rain in the clip. Leaning his forehead against a cabinet, he shut his eyes and was pulled back to another rainy night 7 years ago. The smell of gasoline and hot vinyl. The whine of metal like an animal in pain. He'd been trapped in someone else's car. Just another side job gone wrong. The rescue lights were flashing, but the defining moment was when a man in a dark coat appeared, wedged a crowbar into the crumpled door, and barked, "Look at me," Ethan had. "You're gonna be fine," the man said, not hang in there, but a declaration, as if he had the authority to decide. And somehow he'd made it true. That man had been Marcus Hawley. The phone rang, blocked number. "You doing all right, Ethan?" Marcus's voice was low, intimate, the way people sound after sitting at your hospital bed. "I live on what I see," Ethan said. "Seeing isn't knowing. Here's what I owe you. Some things a man like you shouldn't touch. They'll eat you from the inside out." "Like rust?" Ethan asked. "Like debt," Marcus said. "Don't make me say it again." The call cut. Ethan set the phone down as if it might bruise. A faint scent drifted into the kitchen, the smell of Ava's hair after rain. Her coat drying on the radiator. By noon, the rain had turned to drizzle. Ethan returned to work. The sandwich shop downstairs smelled of pepper and smoked meat. In the elevator, people chatted about rent and sports. Harmless, drifting conversations like minnows in a stream. In HR, Nora's smile never reached her eyes. A stack of folders sat in front of her. "Routine check," she said. "We need to make sure all access is by the book." "You pulled from backup last night?" "Yes, signal loss. I restored it to verify." "Any exports?" "No, we noticed." The log trail was tidied up. "Probably the auto-clean script," Ethan said evenly. "Ethan, you've been here a long time. People know you're trustworthy. But misunderstandings can ruin people. Consider this a friendly reminder. I understand." He understood perfectly. They just told him they'd been breathing down his neck. Out in the hall, Jason leaned against the wall with a soda can. "HR likes to be cryptic," he smirked. "Don't let them rattle you." "Yeah." But in the warped aluminum reflection, Jason's face bent unnaturally, maybe from the metal, maybe from his words. His shift ended at 3. Rain still in the air, Ethan walked home like he was wearing a coat lined with lead. The moment he stepped inside, he knew someone had been here. Not from the mess, everything sat in place like obedient actors, but from the smell. Stale smoke. Foreign skin oil. The shoebox under the bed had been shifted half an inch. The drive was gone. The phone rang. "You owe me a life," Marcus said. "Don't forget." He hung up. No threats. No shouting. Just a reminder, like a hand on the shoulder. Heavy enough to tell you it's no longer yours alone. Ethan sat down, chest heaving like he'd been running. Every object in the room looked like it belonged to someone else now. The scarred desk, the thick curtains, the wall with a crack shaped like lightning. Each one seemed to ask, "What are you going to do with us?" He opened the closet, shuffled hangers pointlessly, until his fingers brushed the empty lining where the drive had been. At the bottom lay a scrap of paper, an old dry cleaning receipt with a line in his own handwriting. "Justice is a long road." A note from some forgotten night, now the only hook left to hang a decision on. He poured a glass of water and drank until his stomach hurt. The city exhaled behind him. His reflection in the dark window looked back. He logged into an old cloud account, one he'd used for tests when he first started the job. Sometimes the past leaves behind what the future needs. The drafts folder was empty, then flickered. A gray file appeared, like a fish breaking the surface. He clicked. Rain poured. At the 1-minute mark, 4 figures. At 2 minutes, hands rise and fall. At 3, the lamplight slides over Marcus's face like an unsigned confession. Over the rain, Ethan heard another sound, not in the clip, but in the room, his own heartbeat, slowing into the steady rhythm of someone who's decided. He hovered. Overshare, the prompt asked for an email. Ava came to him, not her face, but the way she'd unconsciously touched her collarbone whenever she was unsure. When people lie, she'd said, their body sets off alarm, shoulders stiff, eyes shift, hands to the neck. I don't need the story. I watch the body. Ethan's shoulders were loose. His hands stayed still. His eyes looked straight ahead. Maybe telling the truth was just a posture. He typed the address of a journalist who'd once asked about irregularities. In data. He'd never replied. Now his fingers moved without hesitation. Watch this. And if I call, pick up, send. The screen went still. Outside, the rain had thinned to threads. The city lifted its head from under the wet blanket. Ethan sat there until the afternoon light smeared orange along the desk edge. No knock at the door. No sirens painting the walls. Just a shift in the air, like wind changing direction. He stepped out onto the balcony. Down in the alley, a new faux shop sent up the scent of broth. A bike rolled past with a bundle of yellow chrysanthemums. The city could be gentle on its cruelest days. A paradox he'd learned to respect. His phone lit with a message. Justice is a long road. You've chosen. The wind off the river chilled his palm on the railing. No footsteps pounding the stairs. No strange hand tugging his coat. Just the broth smell, the crunch of bike tires, the orange glow from a neighbor's patio heater, and the knowledge that something had begun, and the rest of his life was tilting toward it. Somewhere below, a man was calling, "Honey, I'm home." Somewhere, a woman opened her oven, the timer chirping like a cricket. Somewhere, Ava might be standing at a window, watching rain, fingers at her collarbone. He didn't know. But for the first time in years, what he saw and what he did were on the same side. In the dark, his eyes adjusted. The city lit itself through 100 window cracks, like a swarm of fireflies, and the night, patient as a clerk, began to take notes. The story broke in whispers. Not to the public, not yet. The file hadn't gone viral. It hadn't even surfaced online. But in certain corners of the city, people were already circling it like sharks scenting blood. Ethan didn't hear it first from the journalist. He heard it from a janitor on the 16th floor. He'd stepped into the elevator on Monday morning, coffee in hand, when Rick, the night custodian, leaned against his mop handle and said, "You hear about the storm coming down at the precinct?" His tone was half gossip, half warning. Ethan's thumb brushed the coffee cup seam. "No, why?" Rick shrugged, eyes narrowing like he was measuring Ethan's role in whatever was brewing. "Rumor says somebody's got a clip of cops pounding. A kid, and not just any cop." Ethan didn't reply. The elevator doors closed, sealing them in with the scent of bleach. "Word is, it's Hale," Rick added. Ethan kept his gaze on the floor indicator, as if the flickering numbers might offer an escape hatch. "Rumors spread fast, yeah," Rick said, "but some spread faster when they're true." By noon, the journalist finally called. Her voice was brisk, practiced in cutting through both lies and panic. "Ethan Cole?" He didn't answer right away. "I'm Rachel Quinn. You sent me something. It's real." He closed the office door, turning the lock with a quiet click. "I didn't say it was from me. You didn't have to. I've been chasing this for months. Hale's name comes up in every lead. But this is proof." "It's context," Ethan said flatly. "Proof needs more. That's what I'm after. I'm not here to burn you, Cole, but if you've got more, it could break this open." You know how many complaints against Hale have been buried? Internal Affairs calls him untouchable. Ethan remembered the feel of Hale's hand gripping his jacket on the night of the crash firm. Certain, like it could hold back death itself. That same hand in the clip, crushing a boy's skull into the wet concrete. You think you know him, Ethan said. You don't. I know what I've got, Rachel replied. And I know the kind of men who think they're untouchable only stay that way if people keep letting them. He almost laughed, but it came out as an exhale. You sound like you've done this before. I have, and I've seen what happens to people who hand me the truth. Her silence after that was heavy with implication. When Ethan left work, the air smelled faintly of ozone and fried onions from a food truck parked by the curb. He cut down an alley to avoid the busier streets, but halfway through, he felt that tightening between the shoulder blades. The sixth sense you get from too many hours watching people on screens, footsteps behind him. Too measured to be random. He turned at the mouth of the alley. Marcus. Hale stood under a flickering street lamp. The raincoat was dark, unremarkable, but Marcus had always carried himself like he was still in uniform. The kind of man who didn't need to shout to own the space around him. Evening, Ethan, he said, as if they'd run into each other at a grocery store. Ethan didn't move. You've been in my apartment. Marcus smiled without warmth. You had something that belonged to me. It didn't belong to you. Everything in that room belonged to me the moment I saved your life. The words weren't loud, but they landed like bricks. Ethan took a step forward, closing the distance until the rain haloed both of them in the lamp's pale light. I didn't ask you to save me. Marcus tilted his head. No, but you owed me for it, and you still do. They stood in the rain, two silhouettes locked in a quiet standoff. You can't put this back in the box, Marcus said finally. Even if you want to. Ethan didn't answer. Marcus stepped back into the dark, his shape dissolving between the parked cars. That night, Ethan lay awake, the hum of the refrigerator drilling into his skull. He thought of Ava again, not the warmth this time, but the way she'd left without slamming the door. The quiet, polite kind of leaving that hurt worse than shouting. Reached for his phone, stared at Rachel's number, then put it back down. Sleep didn't come. By morning, neither did peace. Two plainclothes officers were waiting in the lobby when he arrived at work. Their jackets were just a little too stiff, their haircuts a little too neat. Mr. Cole? One asked, flipping open a badge. We'd like to ask you a few questions about your system access. It wasn't an arrest. Not yet. But as they walked him upstairs, past the glass offices where coworkers pretended not to stare, Ethan understood. The circle was tightening, and the only way out was forward. The two plainclothes officers shepherded Ethan into a small, windowless conference room. No clock, no decor. Just a table, 3 chairs, and the hum of the vehicle like a giant animal breathing behind the walls. The older one set a small recorder in the center. Just routine, he said. His tone was sanded down to neutrality, but there was something in his eyes, a faint gleam, like a man who already knew the answer to his questions. You accessed restricted backup footage 2 nights ago. The younger one began, flipping through a manila folder. What was the reason? Signal loss at one of the park cameras, Ethan said. I restored it to verify the system wasn't compromised. And was it? Ethan let the silence breathe. It was. Briefly. The older one leaned back. Briefly, he rolled the word in his mouth as if tasting it. We've had issues before. Usually they're contained. The younger one slid a paper across the table, a screenshot of a system log with his ID on it. This entry, you deleted it? It was auto-cleared, Ethan replied, steady. Maintenance script. You're good with systems, the older one said. You know a maintenance script doesn't touch logs less than 7 days old. Ethan didn't blink. Then maybe someone else did. The officers exchanged a glance. The older one switched off the recorder. You seem like a smart guy, Cole. Smart guys know when to walk away from things that aren't their problem. When they left, the room felt smaller. The air seemed to stick to his skin. Rachel called again that evening. "You're being watched," she said without preamble, and not the obvious way. The uniforms are just the scarecrow. The real thing's behind them. Ethan stood at his kitchen counter, phone wedged between shoulder and ear, staring at the untouched dinner he'd made on autopilot. "I know," he said. "Then we have to move. I've got a source inside EA who says Hale's been bulletproof for a decade, but now, if I can get 2 more independent corroborations, the department can't bury it without starting a war with the day." He poured a glass of water, the faucet's hiss sounding like rain again. "And you think I'm one of the 2? I think you're the one who can lead me to the others." He didn't answer right away. His eyes drifted to the coat in the closet, the one with the empty lining where the drive had been. "What happens to the people who talk to you?" he asked. "Some keep breathing," she said. "Some don't." It wasn't a threat. It was the weather report. The next morning, Ethan found a sticky note on his monitor. "System audit at 11. Bring your credentials." No signature, just block. Letters in black ink. At 10:55, he walked into the server room. Nora from HR was there with Jason, both in front of a terminal. Jason looked up. "We're running access verification." "On me?" "On everyone," Nora said, too quickly. "Routine." Ethan handed over his keycard. Jason slid it into the reader. His fingers moved with the casual precision of someone who'd done this too many times. "You log into the backups from here?" Jason asked. Ethan studied his face. "From my station." Jason's lips twitched, not a smile exactly, more like an involuntary tick. "Right. That's what the logs say." He could feel Nora watching them like a tennis match. The audit ended with a bland "all set." But as Ethan left, Jason's voice followed him. "Hey, Cole, careful out there. Feels like rain." That night, the rain came back. Ethan sat at his desk at home, lights off, listening to it drum against the window. The city felt muted, as if someone had turned the saturation down. He opened the cloud account again, scrolling through old test files. He found a system schematic from 2 years ago, one that mapped every private feed Hale's unit had access to. A thought occurred to him, dangerous in its simplicity. If he could get Rachel this map, she could cross-reference incidents, find the buried ones, connect the dots Hale didn't want connected. But accessing it now would light up every alarm in the building. The phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "I've got your second source. We just need one more. Don't make me find them without you." Ethan typed, deleted, typed again. Finally, "Meet me tomorrow. Same spot as the clip." Her reply was instant. "I'll be there, Central Park West, 2 a.m. The rain was softer now, more of a mist that coated everything in a thin sheen. Ethan stood under the same lamp that had caught Hale's face in the footage. The bench nearby was slick. The air smelled faintly of wet earth and gasoline from a distant street sweeper. Rachel approached from the shadows, hood up, eyes scanning the park before settling on him. "You picked a risky place," she said. "It's where it happened," Ethan replied. "Figured it should be where it starts." She pulled a recorder from her pocket but didn't turn it on. "You sure you want to do this?" "No," he said. "But I think I have to." He handed her a flash drive. Not the map that was still too dangerous, but another copy of the clip, cleaned up, stabilized, with the timestamp data intact. Her eyes widened slightly as she pocketed it. "You realize this makes you a target?" "I already am." They stood there a moment, the city's hum a low backdrop. "Then let's make it worth it," Rachel said. Ethan nodded. Somewhere deep in the park, a siren wailed and faded, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was disappearing. The city had a way of knowing when something was about to happen. It wasn't the people, not really, but the concrete itself. The hum and the wires, The way the light from the street lamps seemed to press tighter against the dark, as if trying to see ahead. Ethan felt it in the solace of his shoes as he stepped off his building stoop. Each contact with the wet pavement was a pulse, a reminder. The air was damp and heavy, the kind that carried every smell: diesel from a bus 3 blocks away, faint garlic from a restaurant closing 4. The night, the metallic tang that followed rain over old iron rails. He kept his hood up. Not to hide, not really, but because the weight of fabric over his head gave him the illusion of control, like drawing a curtain around a stage where he was both the actor and the audience. In his pocket, the second flash drive. Not the cleaned-up copy he'd given Rachel, but something sharper, uncut. Hale's voice had never made it into the first file, but here, in this one, fragments of sound bled through. A low curse, a name hissed between clenched teeth. The kind of detail that could make a jury sit forward. He was going to show it to Holly, not as leverage, not exactly as a threat, but as a way to force something human out of the man. The streets thinned as he headed north. Storefronts gave way to shuttered laundromats and chain-link fences hung with city notices no one read. He passed a woman smoking under a busted awning, her eyes following him until he turned the corner. He thought of Ava then, uninvited, as always. Not her leaving, not even her smile, but the way she used to watch people on the subway, reading them like novels. She'd nudge him, whisper a theory about their lives, their secrets. She'd always gotten the endings wrong, but her voice had been so certain he'd almost believed her. He wondered how she'd read him now. The man with his shoulders a little too square, his gaze too fixed ahead. Would she guess that the ending he was walking toward wasn't written yet? Or would she see that maybe, deep down, he didn't care if it was? Central Park West at night had a sound all its own. The rain slicked the paths, turned the leaves to dark mirrors, softened the air until footsteps vanished almost as soon as they were made. The lamp, the one from the clip, still stood there, its base flecked with rust, its cone of light bending slightly toward the bench, as though tired of holding itself upright. Ethan arrived early. He wanted to stand in the quiet before Holly did. He wanted the place to feel his presence first. He didn't sit. He stood just outside the lamplight, where the mist could beat on his jacket without the heat of the bulb drying it away. Every sound seemed to have a direction: the wet shuffle of a jogger's shoes somewhere to the east, the soft tick of a crossing signal beyond the park wall, the faint buzz of the lamp above him, like a static charge waiting for a touch. When the figure finally appeared from the path's curve, Ethan didn't move. Marcus Holly walked like a man who already knew the ground. His coat was zipped, collar turned up against the mist, but his face was uncovered, a deliberate choice, Ethan thought. Like saying, "I'm not hiding from you." They stopped with 2 yards between them, the light painting one half of Marcus's face in gold and leaving the other in deep shadow. "You called," Marcus said. Ethan reached into his pocket, felt the cool edge of the flash drive between his fingers. "I wanted to see your face when you watched it." Marcus's eyes flicked once. Curiosity, maybe, or calculation. "And why would I watch it?" "Because you know what's on it. And because I think part of you still cares what I think of you." The faintest twitch at the corner of Hale's mouth, not a smile, not quite a sneer. "Careful, Ethan. That kind of thinking can make you believe we're the same." Ethan stepped into the light. The mist caught in his hair, made it look like frost under the lamp. "We're not the same. I don't put kids in the hospital. And I don't let the people who kill my men walk free," Marcus said. Voice low but steady. There it was, not an excuse, but a truth dressed like one. Ethan held his gaze. "And if the next one's innocent?" Marcus didn't answer. For a moment, the only sound was the lamp's hum and the soft drip of rain from the tree branches above. The silence stretched until it had shape, a wall between them, damp and unsteady but solid enough to keep either man from stepping closer. Marcus shifted his weight, the leather of his coat creaking faintly. "You think this is about innocence," he said at last. "It's not. It's about survival. You've never been the one with a partner bleeding out in your arms because the court said due process." Ethan felt a flicker of something almost like pity. Not for the words, he didn't believe them, but for the way Marcus said them. As if reciting a prayer he no longer knew the meaning of but couldn't stop repeating. "I'm not a cop," Ethan said. "I don't have to justify what I saw." "You're something worse," Marcus replied. "A man who owes a life but thinks debts are optional." That landed harder than Ethan wanted it to. For a moment, the memory of twisted metal and Hale's hand on his jacket surged up, the smell of gasoline, the heat of his own breath against glass. It wasn't a cinematic rescue. It had been messy, terrifying, and real, and still. Ethan had walked away. "I'm here because I think you can still tell the truth," Ethan said finally. Marcus's eyes narrowed. "To you?" "To anyone," Ethan said. He took the flash drive from his pocket, held it out in his palm. "Watch it. Say on record what you did, and why. Let people see the man you want them to see. Or I send it, and they'll see the man I saw." Marcus didn't take it. His gaze dropped to the drive as if it were a loaded gun pointed at his chest. "You think this little piece of plastic will change anything?" he asked. "They'll call it edited. Fake. You'll be the guy who doctored evidence because he had a grudge." "Maybe," Ethan said. "But it'll be out there. And you won't control it anymore." A gust of wind rattled the bare branches overhead, shaking loose a sprinkle of water that landed cold against Ethan's neck. For the first time since he'd arrived, Marcus looked away, not down, not at the ground, but past Ethan, into the trees beyond the path. His jaw worked once, like he was chewing over a sentence he didn't want to spit out. "You ever wonder," Marcus said slowly, "why I was even there the night you got hit? Why it was me who pulled you out?" Ethan frowned. "I figured it was chance." Marcus's gaze came back to him, steady now. It wasn't. There was something in his tone, a hook baited with something Ethan didn't want to bite but couldn't ignore. "What are you saying?" Ethan asked. Marcus didn't answer directly. "Not everything on that video is what you think it is. Some debts go deeper than the ones you can name." Ethan felt the urge to press, to demand details, but he knew that was Marcus's rhythm. Give just enough to make you ask, then hold the rest hostage. Instead, he closed his fingers around the flash drive and slipped it back into his pocket. "If that's supposed to keep me quiet, it's a bad pitch." Marcus smiled faintly, the kind of smile that belonged to a man who'd survived too many kinds of trouble to believe anyone could truly threaten him. "Then I guess we'll see whose truth survives the longest." He stepped backward into the dark, his shape thinning until the mist took it completely. Ethan stayed in the light. The rain was slowing, but the cold had sharpened. His fingers, still curled around the flash drive, ached from the pressure. On the walk home, his mind kept circling Marcus's words. Not chance. Some debts go deeper. It was the kind of thing Ava would have obsessed over, dissecting it for hidden meanings until both of them were dizzy from possibilities. He could almost hear her voice. "Maybe you were already part of his story before you knew him." And that, more than the confrontation itself, was what followed him up the stairs to his apartment. By the time Ethan reached his building, the mist had thickened into a fine, cold drizzle. The hallway smelled faintly of damp plaster and the ghost of someone's fried dinner. The light outside his apartment door flickered once when he slid the key in, then steadied. He stepped inside, locked the door behind him, and stood there for a moment without moving. The apartment was as it had been when he left, shoes lined. By the wall, coat hung neat, the small table with its single chair. Nothing out of place. And yet, the air felt different. Like the echo of someone's breath still lingered in the corners. He checked the closet. The winter coat, the one that had once hidden the drive, hung in its place, zipper slightly crooked. The crookedness was wrong. Ethan always zipped it flush to the collar. He pulled it down. Inside the lining, a piece of paper. Folded once, no envelope. He unfolded it. A single line in blocky pen. You don't know what you were saved from. No signature. No date. The pen stroke pressure was heavy, as if whoever wrote it wanted to leave a dent even after the ink faded. The phone rang. Rachel. You saw him, she said, not asking. Double quotes, yes. And he talks like the truth is something you can rent by the hour. Rachel exhaled sharply. That means he's worried. The cocky ones don't meet you in person unless they're trying to read you. Ethan didn't answer. I pulled his file, she continued. Hale's unit has a pattern, uses street cams as blind spots for certain operations. The video you sent isn't the first time that corner's gone dark. You ever check if there were outages near where your accident happened? Ethan froze. I can, she said quickly. If you give me the exact location. It was on 12th and Garrison, he said, before thinking better of it. There was the sound of keys tapping on her end. Hold on, Jesus. Ethan, the camera. At that intersection was offline for 27 minutes the night of your crash. And get this, 3 other cameras within a 2-block radius went down in sync. You were already on someone's radar that night. The words landed like a slow punch. You think Hale was following me? I think he knew exactly where you'd be, Rachel said. The question is why? That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, watching the slick street outside catch and release the light of passing cars. He kept replaying Marcus's words. It wasn't chance. He'd always imagined the accident as a random stroke of bad luck, wrong place, wrong time. Now the edges were starting to change. The frame was warping, and inside it, a new picture was trying to form. Ava's voice, from years ago, surfaced again. People don't just happen into each other's lives. Not like that. He closed his eyes. For the first time since the crash, he wondered if the night Marcus had saved him hadn't been salvation at all, but an introduction. The rain stopped just before dawn, leaving the streets slick and quiet, like the city was holding its breath. Ethan was still at the window, his coffee cold, when his phone vibrated with a text from Rachel. You should see this in person. The address was a Cafe 3, neighborhoods over, the kind of place where the hum of espresso machines could drown out anything important you didn't want overheard. He got there before her, sat at a corner table, back to the wall. The place smelled of burnt milk and pastries, and somewhere in the background, a saxophone track was looping too softly to follow. Rachel arrived with a battered laptop bag and eyes that looked like she'd been awake as long as he had. She didn't bother with pleasantries, just flipped the laptop open and slid it across to him. The screen showed a still from a traffic cam, time-stamped the night of his accident. It was blurry, grainy, but there, half in shadow, was Marcus. Hale, standing on the corner, looking straight into the lens. That's a block from where you crashed, Rachel said. Camera feed went dark 2 minutes after this frame. Same night, 2 more feeds in the area went down. Ethan stared at the image until the pixels began to shimmer. He was waiting. Rachel nodded, and not for a bus. Another keystroke, and the frame changed. A different angle, this one from a storefront camera. Marcus again, but not alone. 2 other men in plain clothes. One of them, Rachel pointed out, was a uniformed officer 3 years later, implicated in another beating that never made it to court. I think your accident was part of something bigger, she said. And I think Hale made sure he was the one to pull you out, maybe to control the story, maybe because you were useful to him alive. Ethan's throat felt tight. Useful. Alive. The words sat together like oil and water, refusing to blend out all these years. He'd thought of that night as a clean, uncomplicated line. Marcus had saved him, and he'd owed Marcus for it. Now, that line was a knot. Why me? Ethan asked, though he knew Rachel didn't have the answer. She shook her head. That's the part we still don't know. But if we find out, you might not like it. He leaned back, closed his eyes for a moment. The sound of the cafe, the hiss of steam, the clink of cups, faded until he could hear only the steady beat of his own pulse. When he opened them again, the photo was still there. Marcus, half in shadow, watching him from years away. Rachel spoke quietly, almost gently. If you go forward with this, Ethan, it's not just about exposing what he did to that kid in the park. It's about tearing open whatever this is between you two. You ready for that? He didn't answer right away. Outside, a bus went past, its windows catching the weak morning light and breaking it into fragments across the cafe wall. Finally, he said, if he saved me just to keep me in his pocket, then maybe the only way to pay that debt is to burn the pocket. Rachel's eyes held his for a long beat. Then she closed the laptop. Then we burn it. That night, Ethan stood on his balcony again. The city was louder now. Cars, sirens, voices spilling from open bar doors. He thought of Marcus somewhere in that noise, maybe watching, maybe already planning his next move. In his pocket, the flash drive felt heavier than it had any right to be. For the first time, he wondered if telling the truth might not free him from Marcus, but tie them together forever. In a way neither of them could break. And yet, as he looked out over the restless streets, he knew the fuse was already lit. Ethan woke to the sound of voices in the hallway. Not the normal early morning shuffle of neighbors. These were low, clipped, official. He stayed still in bed, listening. Doors on the right, a knock. 3 firm raps. He pulled on jeans, ran a hand through his hair, and opened the door to find 2 men in plain suits and an older woman in a navy windbreaker, with city inspector stitched above the breast pocket. Mr. Cole? The woman asked. Yes, routine safety inspection. We had an anonymous tip about a structural issue in the unit. Ethan's mind clicked through possibilities. I'm not aware of any. Won't take long. She cut in, already. Stepping past him, the 2 men followed, scanning the room like they were mapping it. One of them let his eyes linger a little too long on the coat closet. Ethan leaned against the wall, arms crossed, letting them go through the motions. If Marcus had sent them, and he was sure Marcus had, there'd be nothing here for them to find. Not anymore, but their presence wasn't about finding. It was about reminding. When they left, the older woman gave him a polite, professional smile that somehow felt like a warning. Stay safe, Mr. Cole. Rachel called 15 minutes later. They're poking at you, aren't they? She said. 3 of them, pretending to be a safety inspection. That's not standard. Marcus is flexing. Ethan moved to the balcony, lowered his voice. I think he wants me to know he can walk through my door anytime he wants. That's exactly what he wants you to know, Rachel said. But that also means you've got him worried. He looked out at the street below, where a man in a dark coat leaned against a lamppost, pretending to scroll his phone. I'm not sure worried is the word. He's just moving his pieces. Rachel's voice sharpened. Then we move ours faster. That night, Ethan found an envelope under his door. No name, no return address. Inside was a single photograph. A candid shot of Ava. She was on a city sidewalk in broad daylight, coffee cup in one hand, phone in the other, her hair catching the light. Ethan hadn't seen her in 2 years. The photo looked like it had been taken yesterday. On the back, a single line in Marcus's blocky handwriting. Some debts don't disappear. Ethan sat at the table with the photo in front of him for a long time, the city's night noises filtering through the walls. Ava had nothing to do with this. Nothing to do with Marcus. And now, she was a piece on the board. Ethan didn't call her right away. He told himself it was because he needed to think. But the truth was uglier. He needed to decide how much of himself he was willing to expose. Photograph lay on the table, the edges curling slightly under the apartment's dry heat. Ava, mid-step, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. There was something in her expression he recognized, that little crease between her brows when she was focused on something she wasn't going to share with anyone. 2 years without seeing her in person, and Marcus could pluck her out of the crowd like she'd been standing under a spotlight. He picked up the phone, thumb hovering over her name. It rang twice before she answered. Ethan. No warmth, but no ice either. Just his name, as if she'd been expecting him and still wasn't sure whether she was glad. Are you okay? A pause. I think so. Why? He could hear street noise behind her, passing cars, the low hum of a crosswalk signal. Where are you? I'm walking to the train. Another pause. Why? He looked at the photo again. Because someone sent me a picture of you. Silence. The kind that fills with every bad possibility. Who? She asked. You don't want to know, Ethan said. Just pay attention. If you see someone watching you, don't what? Don't live my life? Her voice had an edge now. You don't get to call me after 2 years and give me orders. This isn't about us. That's the problem, she said. And then softer, but I'll keep my eyes open. The line went dead. Rachel came over an hour later. And Finn didn't usually let anyone into his apartment, not anymore, but this was different. He showed her the photo. She studied it, then set it down like evidence in a case file. He's telling you he knows where to hurt you. And he's daring you to make the next move anyway. Then we make it, Ethan said. Rachel looked at him. If we do, you need to accept that he might hit back through her. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then we keep her out of it. Rachel shook her head slowly. That's not how people like him work. The moment you care about someone, they're already in it. Outside, a siren wailed and faded. Inside, the photo lay between them like a third presence, quiet but undeniable. Rachel poured herself a glass of water from the sink, drank half, then set it down without looking at him. When you go after someone like Holly, she said, you don't just gather evidence. You create pressure points. You make him show you who he really is before he's ready. Ethan leaned against the table, the photo of Ava still in front of him. And how do you make him do that? You give him something he can't ignore, she said. Something he thinks is his. It took him a second to realize what she meant. You want to leak part of the video. Not the whole thing. Just enough for him to know it's out there, but not enough for him to know who's holding the rest. That's still going to put you on his radar. Rachel smiled without humor. I've been on his radar since I started digging into him. At least this way, I control the narrative. Ethan shook his head. No, if it's going out, it comes from me. That's suicide, Rachel said flatly. You're not a reporter. You don't have legal cover. You don't have sources to back you up. I do have something he doesn't expect, Ethan cut in. I'm the one he thinks is still in his pocket. He's betting I won't burn him, so when I do, he let the sentence trail off. Rachel studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. All right, we do it your way. But we control every variable we can. They spent the next hour going over the plan. The clip would drop on a small, anonymous blog, not one of Rachel's usual outlets. The point wasn't to make it go viral yet. It was to make Marcus feel the leak in his hand, to make him scramble. He'll come looking for the source, Rachel said. And when he does, we'll be ready to record him doing something he can't talk his way out of. Ethan glanced at the photo of Ava again. And if he goes for her instead? Rachel's tone softened, but her words didn't. Then we make sure he knows the fastest way to get what he wants is through you. It was a dangerous calculus, offering himself as bait to shield someone else. But in Ethan's mind, there was no other equation worth working. By the time Rachel left, the rain had returned, a slow, steady rhythm against the glass. Ethan stood at the window, watching the streetlights blur through the drops. In the reflection, he could see the photo of Ava on the table behind him. For a moment, it looked like she was standing there in the room, watching him the way she used to, head tilted, waiting for him to say the thing he was avoiding. He turned away. Tomorrow they'd light the fuse. The post went up at 9:03 a.m. a 2-minute clip, stripped of metadata, uploaded to a nondescript community blog with a name bland enough to be forgettable. No commentary, no captions. Just the rain, the shadows. The blow that dropped the kid in the park. By 9:17, Rachel's burner phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You've made a mistake. By 9:25, 3 different IP addresses were trying to trace the upload. Rachel's software fed them bad. Roots, a coffee shop in Baltimore, a public library in Reno, a motel in Duluth. By 9:40, Ethan's personal phone lit up with a call from a number he didn't recognize, but knew instantly. He answered without speaking. "You just cut the brakes on your own car," Marcus said. His voice was steady, but there was an undercurrent now, not fear, exactly, but the awareness that a line had been crossed. "You saw it then," Ethan said. "I saw enough to know you're playing a game you don't understand." Then, "Teach me," Ethan replied. Marcus gave a low, humorless chuckle. Lesson 1. When you pull a trigger, make sure you're not standing in front of the barrel. The line went dead. At 10:05, Rachel called from her end. "He's moving." 2. Fast. "My contact at the precinct says Hale cleared his schedule and took 2 guys from his old unit with him. They're not answering dispatch." Ethan glanced at the photo of Ava on his table. "You think he's going after her? Or you?" Rachel said. "Either way, we need eyes on both." "I'll go to her," Ethan said. "That's exactly what he'll expect you to do," Rachel warned. "If he's baiting you, he'll have someone watching her place. You walk in, you'll walk out with company." He hesitated, weighing speed against subtlety. "Then you go," he said finally. "I'll stay here. If he comes, I want him to find me." Rachel didn't like it. He could hear it in her silence, but she agreed. "Keep the line open." By 11:12, the street outside Ethan's building had gone strangely quiet. No delivery trucks, no foot traffic. Even the usual dog walkers had vanished. Ethan sat at the table, the flash drive in his pocket, the photo of Ava in front of him. Somewhere below, a car door closed softly. He leaned back, exhaled slowly, and waited for the knock. The knock came at 11:19. Not the 3-rap authority of cops or inspectors. This was slower. 2 knocks, a pause, 1 more. The rhythm of someone who wanted you to know they weren't in a hurry. Ethan didn't move at first. The building was so still he could hear the faint hum of the exit sign in the hallway. The second set of knocks came exactly the same way. He opened the door. Marcus. Hale stood there alone. No coat this time, just a dark suit, the collar of his shirt open, no tie. The suit looked like it had been pressed hours ago and worn just long enough to lose its perfection. "May I come in?" Marcus asked. His tone was polite, almost formal, the kind of courtesy that came from a man who didn't need it. Ethan stepped aside without answering. Marcus walked in like he'd been here before, his eyes taking in the room without turning his head. He stopped at the table, glanced at the photo of Ava, then looked back at Ethan. "You care about her," Marcus said. Not a question. Ethan stayed by the door. "If you came here to threaten her, you can leave now. I came here to give you a choice," Marcus said. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a small black leather case, and set it on the table next to the photo. When he opened it, Ethan saw not a weapon, but a stack of documents neatly clipped, the top page stamped confidential. "This," Marcus said, tapping the file, "is the full report from the night of your accident. Not the one you saw, not the one in the official record, the real one." Ethan didn't move toward it. "Why now?" "Because you've made yourself dangerous," Marcus said. "And dangerous people need context before they do something they can't take back." "You mean before I ruin you?" Marcus's eyes held his. "Before you ruin yourself." Ethan let a long beat pass. "What's in there?" "The part you've been missing," Marcus said. "The part where you learn you weren't just some unlucky kid in the wrong place. You were already in the middle of something. That night, you were the target." The words hung there, heavy enough to bend the air. Ethan crossed the room slowly, stopping on the other side of the table. The file sat between them like a third player. "If I read this," Ethan said, "what do you want in return?" Marcus's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "You put the rest of that footage back where it belongs. And we both walk away knowing more than we say." Ethan glanced at the file again. It might be the truth. Or it might be the hook Marcus had been dangling since the park. Either way, it was bait meant exactly for him, and Marcus knew he was hungry enough to consider taking it. Ethan didn't sit. He stayed standing, looking down at the folder like it might explode if handled wrong. Marcus stepped back, giving him space, but his eyes never left Ethan's face. The first page was a standard incident report, except half the lines were blacked out. The date and location matched what he remembered. The time didn't. According to this, the accident had happened 33 minutes later than he'd always believed. The second page was where the redactions got messy, uneven, like whoever had done it had been rushing. In between the black bars were fragments of words that meant nothing on their own. Surveillance position, asset relocation, secondary extraction point. Ethan's stomach tightened. The third page was a grainy still frame from a traffic cam, not the one Rachel had shown him. This was from 3 blocks away, earlier in the night. His own face, partially lit by a street lamp, walking toward the corner where the crash would happen. And behind him, blurred but unmistakable, Marcus. He turned the page. The fourth was a list of names. He didn't know most of them, but 3 were circled in red. The first was Marcus Hawley. The second was the officer Rachel had linked to another beating. The third made him stop breathing for a second. Ava Calder. The notation next to her name was short, typed in block letters. Contacted subject through personal channel. Maintain open line. Ethan looked up slowly. Marcus was still watching him, his expression unreadable. "What is this?" Ethan asked, his voice lower now. "That's the part you didn't know," Marcus said evenly. "You were never random. And neither was she. You used her." Marcus tilted his head slightly. "Not in the way you think. She had access I needed. You were just connected." Ethan felt the paper cutting into his fingers as he gripped it harder. "She didn't know." "She didn't have to," Marcus said. "She just had to be there." Ethan put the pages back into the folder and closed it, more to keep his hands from shaking than to protect the contents. "You're lying," Ethan said. "Maybe," Marcus allowed. "But now you'll have to decide if you want to find out which parts are true and what it costs to learn the rest." Ethan kept his hands on the folder, like holding it might keep the room from spinning. "You could have told me this years ago," he said. Marcus's answer was immediate. "You weren't ready to hear it. That's not your call." Marcus's gaze sharpened. "It was exactly my call. I'm the reason you walked out of that wreck breathing. I'm the reason you had time to get ready at all. That's not debt," Ethan said. "That's control. For the first time." Since walking in, Marcus's expression shifted, not much, just a flicker in the eyes, but enough for Ethan to see something behind the calm. "You think the people you're dealing with care about control?" Marcus asked quietly. "They care about survival, same as me, same as you. I'm not like you." "Then stop acting like it," Marcus's voice hardened. "You've got a copy of the video. You've got Rachel in your ear. You've got enough to make noise, but not enough to finish the fight. You push without leverage, they'll bury you so deep you'll think the dark is your new skin." Ethan stared at him. "And you're offering leverage?" "I'm offering a path," Marcus said. "You give me the footage. I give you everything else you need to walk away alive, and to keep her alive." His eyes flicked to the photo of Ava on the table. The air between them thickened, every sound outside fading until it was just the faint tick of Ethan's wall clock. "You keep bringing her into this," Ethan said, his voice low. "Why?" "Because she's already in it," Marcus said. "And you know that's the truth." Ethan thought of Ava's voice on the phone, the stubbornness in it, the way she refused to let him dictate her moves, even in the face of danger. He thought of the line in the file, "Maintain open line." He could hand over the footage, take Marcus's version of the truth, and maybe Ava would stay safe. Or he could burn Marcus now, go public, and risk her becoming collateral damage in a game she didn't even know she was playing. Neither choice was clean. Both stank of compromise. Marcus straightened his jacket. "Think fast, Ethan. The longer that clip's out there, the shorter your life gets." Ethan didn't answer. He just looked at Marcus, and for the first time, he realized the man wasn't afraid of losing. He was afraid of losing control over how the story was told. And that, maybe, was something Ethan could use. Ethan loosened his grip on the folder and slid it across the table toward Marcus, but stopped halfway. Marcus's eyes tracked the movement. "That's the smart choice." Ethan shook his head. "No, the smart choice is not letting you decide what I do next." Marcus's jaw tensed. "You think you can walk a middle line here? That's how people get erased. Or it's how they stay standing long enough to get an angle," Ethan said. "You've spent your whole career making sure you're the one who controls the pace. I'm done letting you set the clock." For a moment, neither moved. The city's noise drifted faintly through the closed windows, a horn in the distance, the low rumble of a bus. "You're bluffing," Marcus said finally. "Maybe," Ethan said. "But here's the thing about bluffing. It works better when the other guy's not sure what cards you've got." Marcus studied him, that old cop's patience in his eyes, but there was something else now too. A glint of calculation, maybe even respect. "You'll regret this," Marcus said, straightening. "Maybe," Ethan said again. "But not today." Marcus left without another word, the click of the door latch sounding louder than it should have. Ethan didn't move for a full minute. Then he pulled his phone from his pocket and dialed. Rachel answered on the first ring. "You okay?" "I didn't give him the footage," Ethan said. "Good. Did you get anything out of him?" "I got enough to know he's been pulling my strings longer than I thought. And enough to know he's not the only one who wants this over." There was a pause. "You've got a plan?" "Not yet," Ethan said, looking at the folder still sitting on his table. "But I've got a way to make him think I do. And that might be enough to make him move where I can see him." "Then we make him move," Rachel said. Ethan looked at the photo of Ava one more time. "Yeah," he said quietly. "We make him move." Marcus didn't come back the next day. He didn't call. Didn't send anyone to knock on the door in his stead, but Ethan knew better than to think that meant retreat. Men like Marcus didn't vanish. They shifted angles. By noon, Rachel sent him a link. "Check this." It was a local news article. City Council to host public hearing on police misconduct allegations. No names yet. No specifics, but Rachel had circled a line halfway down. Captain Marcus Hiley among those expected to testify. "He's moving into daylight," she said over the phone, "which means he's going to try to frame the whole thing on his terms," Ethan said. "Exactly. And if he's testifying, it's because he thinks he can bury you before your name ever comes up." Ethan stared at the headline. A public hearing meant cameras, recordings, transcripts. It also meant that if he timed it right, he could drop something in the middle of Hale's performance that he couldn't spin away from. Rachel's voice dropped lower. "If you're thinking about crashing that hearing, we'd have one shot, and you'd better have more than a grainy clip. He'll come armed with a version of the truth so polished people will want to believe it." "I won't just bring the clip," Ethan said. "I'll bring him." "What do you mean?" "I mean I'll make sure the next time he talks, he says something he can't take back. On record. Under oath." Rachel didn't answer for a beat. "Then, you're planning to wire yourself?" Ethan glanced at the folder Marcus had left. Something like that. That night, Ethan sat on the balcony with the city breathing below him. Somewhere in the dark, Marcus was moving his pieces toward that hearing. And for the first time, Ethan wasn't just reacting. He was setting a trap, one that might close on both of them if he played it wrong. Ethan didn't want to call her again. After the last conversation, Ava had made it clear she wasn't interested in being pulled into whatever shadow he was living under. But he also knew Marcus. If the man felt cornered, Ava would be the first lever he reached for. He waited until after 9, when the city's noise softened into the lull between rush hour and the late-night crowd. She answered on the third ring. "Ethan, I'm not here to argue," he said quickly. "I just need you to hear one thing." A pause. Then, "Go ahead. Stay out of the park for the next week. Don't meet anyone you don't know. And if you see Marcus Hawley anywhere, walk the other way and call me." Her voice carried that same crease he'd seen in the photo, focused, guarded. "You think he's going to try something?" "I think he already has your name in his hand," Ethan said. "I'm trying to make sure he doesn't play it." There was a long silence. Then, "I'll be careful. But you're going to tell me what's really going on after this, Ethan. No more missing pieces." He almost told her everything right then. Almost. But the weight of what Rachel and he were planning felt like too much to lay on her with the hearing still days away. "I will," he said instead. The next morning, Rachel met him in a back booth of a diner 3 blocks from City Hall. She slid a small black device across the table. "You'll wire this under your shirt. Mic and transmitter in one. Signal goes to a recorder I'll be carrying." Ethan picked it up, turning it over in his hand. "And if he spots it?" "Then you improvise," Rachel said. "But don't take it off. If we're going to corner him, we need his words, not just your word against his." They went over the plan until the coffee went cold. Ethan would attend the hearing as a member of the public. Rachel had an inside contact who could position him near the witness area before Hale's testimony. When Hawley took the stand, Ethan would give him just enough of a reason to approach, and then let his own mouth be the weapon. "You'll have maybe 90 seconds before someone realizes you're not supposed to be talking to him," Rachel sighed. "Make them count." That night, back in his apartment, Ethan set the mic on the table beside the folder Marcus had left him. One piece was bait. The other was the net dot, and in 3 days, he was going to try to use both in front of an audience that could finally see Marcus for what he was. If the man didn't find a way to turn the lights off first, the line outside City Hall snaked halfway down the block. Ethan kept his hood up, blending into the crowd of activists, reporters, and city employees clutching clipboards. The January air had a bite, and every exhale clouded in front of him. Inside, the marble-floored lobby buzzed with the low hum of conversation and the occasional bark of an official ushering people through metal detectors. Rachel's contact, a wiry man in a charcoal suit with a badge clipped low on his belt, spotted him near the entrance and gave a barely perceptible nod. "Follow me," he murmured, leading Ethan down a side hall lined with framed photographs of past council members. They stopped at a door marked Staff, O&LY. The man swiped his keycard and gestured him inside. The chamber smelled faintly of old paper and coffee. Rows of chairs faced a long dais where council members shuffled papers and whispered to aides. At the far end, a raised witness table sat under the glare of television lights. Marcus Hawley was already there. He wore a navy suit, hands folded neatly on the table, expression calm, the kind of calm that cameras loved. Rachel slid into a seat 2 rows behind Ethan, her phone angled low in her lap, already recording. The hearing began with other witnesses. Officers in crisp uniforms, lawyers in tailored suits. The language was careful, procedural, as if everyone in the room knew exactly how far they could go without actually stepping on a landmine. Then the clerk called, "Captain Marcus Hawley." Hawley rose, buttoned his jacket, and walked to the table like a man heading for a friendly interview. His oath was delivered in a steady voice. For the next 15 minutes, he painted himself as a guardian of the city, the kind of cop who sometimes had to make hard calls in the field to protect lives. The council members nodded along. The reporters scribbled. Ethan felt the mic under his shirt like a heartbeat. When Hale's statement ended, the chair opened the floor for public comment. Rachel's contact gave the tiniest signal. Now Ethan stood and walked to the aisle. He kept his steps measured, casual, until he was close enough for Holly to see him. Recognition flickered in Marcus's eyes, followed by something sharper. Curiosity. Ethan stopped just short of the witness table. "Captain Holly," he said, voice clear enough for the mics to pick up. "Would you care to tell them what happened in the park that night?" The room stilled. Cameras swiveled. Holly leaned forward, his mouth curving in that small, knowing smile. Ethan had seen too many times. "Careful, son. You're about to step into something you can't step back from. That makes two of us," Ethan said. The tension crackled in the air, the perfect moment to make Marcus speak without thinking. The council chair's gavel rapped once. "Sir, please direct any comments to the committee," but the cameras were already on them. Marcus didn't look at the chair. His eyes stayed locked on Ethan, the faintest curl at the corner of his mouth. "You think you're here to expose me," he said evenly, "but all you're doing is showing them. You don't understand what you're dealing with." "Then explain it," Ethan shot back. "Explain why a man ends up in the hospital with head trauma after an encounter with you and 3 of your officers." A ripple went through the room, low voices, pens scratching faster. Marcus's gaze flicked briefly toward the press gallery, then back. "Because sometimes," he said, "the law doesn't move fast enough. Sometimes you have to act before the damage gets worse." "That's not the law talking," Ethan said. "That's you deciding who deserves to walk away." Marcus leaned in just slightly, enough for the overhead mic to catch every word. "If you'd seen what that kid did before the camera caught up, you'd have done worse." The chair rapped the gavel again, calling for order, but the damage was already done. Rachel, 2 rows back, met Ethan's eye for a fraction of a second and gave the smallest nod. The wire under his shirt had caught every syllable. Ethan could see the calculation flicker across Marcus's face, the slow realization that, for once, he might have given away more than he controlled. The gavel struck again, harder this time, the sound cracking through the murmurs in the chamber. "Order!" The chair barked, eyes flicking between Ethan and Marcus like a referee in a fight that had already gone off script, but the damage was already done. The stenographer's fingers hadn't stopped, and every camera in the room had caught Marcus Hale's last sentence in crystal clarity. Council security stepped toward Ethan, their movements slow but deliberate, not rushing him, just making it clear his time was up. Marcus straightened in his seat, buttoned his jacket, and addressed the committee. "Madam Chair, I'd like to request that my remarks be placed in full context before they're misinterpreted in the court of public opinion." The chair nodded, but her tone had cooled. "Your request is noted, Captain Hull. We'll review the complete testimony." Rachel's contact in the second row leaned forward and whispered something to her. She gave the slightest tilt of her head toward the exit, a silent order to move before someone decided. Ethan was more than just a disruption. Ethan didn't look at Marcus again as the guards escorted him toward the doors. He didn't need to. The image of Hale's face in that split second, after he realized he'd said too much, was already burned into his mind. Outside, the air felt sharper, the sunlight too bright after the chamber's muted lights. Reporters were waiting. Some had been inside. Others had only heard the murmurs rippling out of the hearing. "Sir, what was your exchange with Captain Hawley about? Are you accusing him of misconduct in the park incident? Do you have evidence?" Ethan kept moving. "Watch the tapes," was all he said. Rachel caught up with him half a block away, her breath visible in the cold air. "We've got it," she said. phone still in her hand. Clean audio. His voice, his words, no ambiguity. Then it's out of my hands now, Ethan said. No, Rachel said, matching his pace. It's more in your hands than ever. You just forced him into the open, and now he's going to come for you in the sane daylight. They reached the corner, the sound of traffic filling the space between them. Ethan looked down the street toward City Hall, where the steps were. Still crowded with cameras and shouting voices. One crack in Marcus's armor wasn't going to bring him down. But it was the first one Ethan had made himself, and if he could make one, he could make more. By the time Ethan got back to his apartment, the story was already spinning. Rachel had sent him 3 different news clips, one local station playing the exchange in full, another cutting it into a 30-second highlight reel with dramatic music, and a third. Well, the third was Marcus's counterstrike. The interview had been set up fast, too fast for it to be a coincidence. Marcus sat in front of a softly lit bookshelf, tie loosened just enough to look human, voice low and reasonable. I respect the passion of citizens who care about our city, he said to the anchor, but when accusations are made without the full facts, it puts everyone at risk, including innocent people who have nothing to do with the case. The anchor leaned forward. Are you saying this man is endangering others? I'm saying some of the people involved have families, neighbors, lives outside of politics. And when half-truths go public, those lives can be destroyed. That's not justice. Then he dropped it. The line Ethan knew was deliberate. One of those people is a young woman named Ava Reed. She's a friend of Mr. Cross's, and she's already been approached by people who believe the wrong story. Ethan's stomach went cold. The anchor nodded gravely. And you believe she's being harassed because of this? I believe she's in danger because someone's trying to make a name for himself, Marcus said, his gaze steady on the camera. Rachel's voice came through Ethan's phone before he even realized he'd hit accept. He's dragging her in. He's framing her as a victim of your recklessness. She's not even part of this, Ethan began. She is now, Rachel cut in. And if we don't move fast, the public's going to buy his version before they even see the footage. Ethan muted the call for a moment, pacing the length of his apartment. The window glass reflected him back, the hood still pulled up. From earlier, eyes shadowed, jaw tight. Marcus wasn't just playing defense. He was making Ethan the story. And if he let that stick, Ava would carry the weight of it with him, he unmuted. Then we go on offense, tonight. Rachel showed up. 20 minutes later, still in her coat, hair damp from the icy drizzle outside. She didn't bother with hello, just tossed her bag on the table and pulled out her laptop. We can't just dump the clip raw, she said, already typing. If we do, he'll say it's doctored. We need context, multiple angles, witness, corroboration. Ethan shook his head. That takes time we don't have. He's got Ava's name in circulation now. Every hour we wait is another hour people see her as part of whatever smear he's selling. Rachel paused, fingers hovering above the keys. So what's your play? We give the clip to someone who doesn't care about political blowback. Ethan said. Someone who'll run it uncut and take the heat if it gets messy. Her brows lifted. You're talking about Nolan. Ethan nodded. Nolan Graves, freelance journalist. Reputation for publishing what mainstream outlets wouldn't touch until the story forced their hand. He'd burned enough bridges in the city that the only thing he feared was silence. Rachel leaned back. If we do that, there's no taking it back. Once it's up, it's everywhere. That's the point, Ethan said. Marcus can't bury something that's already out in the wild. And if it's his voice, his words, in front of the council, he can't spin it without admitting he said it. Rachel studied him for a long moment. All right. But you call Ava first. She deserves to know before the internet does. Ava picked up after 2 rings, her tone clipped. What is going on, Ethan? I've got reporters calling me, knocking on my door. I know, he cut in. I'm going to stop it. But you need to hear this. Holly used your name on TV tonight. He's making you a prop in his defense. Why? Because he knows I won't let you take the hit for him, Ethan said. I'm putting out the footage, the real footage. Once it's out, they'll see exactly what he's been hiding. A beat of silence. Then, do it. Just don't disappear afterward. I won't, he said, and meant it, even though he wasn't sure how he could keep that promise. Rachel hit send at 11:42 p.m. The file was in Nolan's hands, and within 8 minutes his social feed lit up with the headline, "Watch, Captain. Marcus Hawley admits to using extra-legal force. Sometimes the law doesn't move fast enough." By midnight, it was everywhere. Ethan didn't sleep. Not because of fear, though that was there, gnawing at the edges, but because the city didn't let him. The notifications didn't stop. Messages from unknown numbers, old friends, strangers, some supportive, others spitting venom in all. Caps. By 7 a.m., the clip had been replayed on every local morning show, paired with panel debates about appropriate use of force and the dangers of trial by social media. Rachel called before he could make coffee. "It's trending nationally," she said without preamble. Marcus is the lead story on 3 networks. But here's the part you need to hear. The police union just announced they're holding a press conference at noon. "That's not a retreat," Ethan said. "No," Rachel agreed. "That's them building a shield." Outside his building, the air was sharp with exhaust and fried dough from the food truck already parked on the corner. Ethan kept his head down as he walked to the bodega, but the cashier still looked up from behind the counter with a slow, knowing blink. "You're the guy," he said simply. Ethan didn't answer. Back upstairs, he found 3 missed calls from Ava. He called back immediately. "They've been outside my building all morning," she said. "Not just reporters, some people shouting things I can't even repeat." "I'm sorry," he said, meaning every syllable. "I'll get someone to—" "I don't need protection," Ava cut in. "I need this to be over." "You started something, Ethan. Make sure you finish it." Her voice shook, but not from fear, from anger. From the weight of being pulled into a war she hadn't chosen. By mid-morning, Rachel sent him a short video clip. Marcus stepping out of an unmarked car, flanked by 2 uniformed officers, smiling as reporters shouted questions. He looked composed, almost amused. "He's going to frame himself as the calm in the storm," Rachel said. "And you? He'll paint you as the chaos." Ethan watched the loop again, jaw tightening. Marcus might control the optics for now, but there was one thing he couldn't control: the fact that his own voice was now the loudest piece of evidence against him, and Ethan intended to make sure it stayed that way. At exactly noon, the police union president stepped up to the podium outside their headquarters, the winter sun glinting off the line of badges behind him. Cameras clicked in bursts, the air heavy with anticipation. Marcus stood to the president's right, expression carved in stone. No fidgeting, no tells, just that steady, unreadable calm. "Recent events have painted one of our most decorated captains in an unfair light," the president began, his voice booming through the microphones. "The public release of incomplete, context-free footage has endangered not only Captain Hawley, but also his colleagues and innocent citizens. We stand united against smear campaigns that undermine law enforcement's ability to do its job." Reporters shouted questions, but the president waved them down, continuing. "Captain Hawley acted within the bounds of his duty, responding to a credible threat that, if left unchecked, could have led to loss of life." The video in question fails to show the minutes leading up to that decisive action. Then, with a theatrical sweep of his arm, he stepped back and let Marcus take the mic. Marcus didn't look at the cameras at first. He looked at the small cluster of supporters who had gathered on the sidewalk, holding signs that read "Stand with Hawley." "I took an oath to protect this city," he began, his voice low and deliberate. "Sometimes that means making choices most people will never have to make. But I made those choices to keep our streets safe. If I have to face public criticism for doing my job, so be it. But I will not apologize for preventing harm when seconds mattered. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. And to those who have dragged good people, like Ava Reed, into this mess to serve their own ambition, you should be ashamed. Ethan, watching on Rachel's laptop from her office, felt his pulse spike. Marcus had just used Ava again, doubling down, framing her as collateral damage in Ethan's crusade. Rachel muted the livestream. He's pushing you into a corner. Either you back off to protect her, or you keep going and risk making her the face of the fallout. Ethan stared at the frozen frame of Marcus on the screen, the sunlight catching the edge of his jawline. He recognized the look. It was the same one the man had worn years ago when he pulled Ethan out of that wreck. Absolute certainty that he was in control. Only this time, Ethan intended to break it. The message came through on Signal and encrypted. Ping from an unknown number. I know what happened in the park. We should talk, tonight. Alone. Ethan almost ignored it. Anonymous tips were a shortcut to dead ends or worse. But the sender had attached something. A still frame from a security feed. Not the city's network. A different angle entirely. The timestamp matched the night of the incident, and the view. Ethan's breath caught. It showed Marcus and his team before the violence started, their formation tightening around the young man, cutting off every escape. The kid's hands were empty. Rachel leaned over his shoulder. Where did they get this? They're inside. Ethan said. Has to be. The next message buzzed through. Meet me at Ashford Station. Platform 3, midnight. Rachel frowned. It's a trap. Probably, Ethan said. But if it's real, it's the missing piece. The context Marcus keeps talking about. This is it, and it destroys him. Rachel folded her arms. Then you're not going alone. He shook his head. If it's someone inside the department, they'll climb up the second they see you. This has to be just me. Ashford Station was almost empty at that hour, the echo of footsteps carrying through the high vaulted ceiling. Platform 3 smelled faintly of metal and rain. A figure stepped out from behind a column, a woman in plain clothes. Her hair pulled back tight, posture military even without the uniform. You're Ethan Cross, she said, not a question. And you are? Detective Marin Voss, she replied. Hale's not the only one who's been watching you. But I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here because I can't watch him get away with this. She slid a small flash drive across the bench between them. Full footage from an unmarked camera. City doesn't know it exists. Holly doesn't either. Ethan stared at it, the metal glinting under the station lights. Why give it to me? Because I can't put it through the chain of command, she said. And you've already made yourself the lightning rod. Might as well give you something worth the strike. Ethan didn't touch the flash drive right away. He kept his hands in his pockets, watching Voss's face for the twitch, the flicker, the giveaway. But her expression stayed flat, her gaze steady. What's on this? It's enough to bury him? Ethan asked. It's enough to show exactly what happened before the first punch was thrown, Voss said. And that what he told the committee was a lie. He tilted his head. Why? Now? Voss's mouth tightened. I've been in his orbit for a long time. You don't survive that without learning when to keep your head down. But this, she tapped the flash drive. This isn't the job I signed up for. And if he keeps his badge after this, it sends the message that none of us answer to the law anymore. A train's horn moaned somewhere down the line, the sound rolling through the station like a warning. Ethan picked up the flash drive. It felt too light for something that could set the city on fire. If I use this, you're exposed. Not if you're smart, she said. Scrub the metadata. Release it through someone he can't tie back to me. And when he figures it out anyway? Ethan asked. Then we're both in the same boat, Voss said. And maybe that's the only way to tip it over. Back in his apartment, Ethan set the flash drive on his desk. Rachel sat across from him, arms folded, eyes on the small piece of metal like it was a loaded weapon. "You think she's for real?" Rachel asked. "I think she's either telling the truth," Ethan said, "or she's setting me up for the cleanest takedown in history." Rachel leaned forward. "So which way do we play it?" Ethan picked up the drive and slid it into his laptop. "We find out." The file tree popped open. And there it was, a single video file, time-stamped, uncut. Ethan clicked play. The first frame hit like a gut punch. The kid in the park, hands up, eyes darting for a way out. Marcus stepping into frame, voice low but cold. "You're done." "Here." Rachel's eyes widened. "He can't spin this. Not even a little." Ethan sat back, a plan already forming. "No," he said. "But I can make him try and choke on it." Ethan closed the laptop. The image of Marcus in the park still burned behind his eyelids. "This isn't just evidence," he said. "It's leverage." Rachel tilted her head. "Meaning?" "Meaning we don't just drop it. We make him commit to his lie, loudly, publicly. Then when the footage hits, it's not just misconduct. It's perjury. He'll have nowhere to run." Rachel leaned back in her chair, a slow grin spreading. "So we push him into doubling down?" "Exactly," Ethan said. "We leak just enough to make him think we've got nothing but a grainy angle. He'll come out swinging, claiming it's fake, taken out of context. Whatever he can sell." "And then," Rachel said, "we drop the real thing." Ethan nodded. "The uncut, high-def version. The one that shows everything." They worked through the night, editing a teaser clip, just 3 seconds long. Shot from the far edge of the park. You could barely see Marcus, but the audio was clean enough to catch the tail end of his threat. "You're done here." At 9 a.m. The clip hit a niche online forum known for whistleblower leaks. Rachel posted it under an anonymous handle, tagged with a vague caption. "More to come." By noon, it had migrated to social media. Comment threads exploded, half of them convinced it was Holly, the other half calling it a deep fake. At 3:17 p.m. Marcus himself stepped in. A post from his verified account, another manufactured smear. "This clip is nothing but a doctored soundbite ripped from an unrelated arrest. I've already instructed my legal team to pursue action against whoever's spreading it." Rachel read it aloud, satisfaction in her voice. He bit. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of what came next. "Good, now we set the hook." The file went live at 8:42 p.m., no countdown. No teaser, no headline designed to go viral. Just the uncut video, uploaded to 3 different platforms and mirrored on half a dozen servers before the first viewer even clicked play. In the first 10 seconds, you could hear the wind through the bare trees in the park. The shuffle of the You could hear the wind through the young man's sneakers on damp pavement. His hands were up. His voice, shaking but steady, said, "I didn't do anything." Then Marcus stepped into frame. No rush, no adrenaline, no visible threat. He glanced once at the 2 officers flanking him, then back at the kid. "You're done here." What followed wasn't a takedown. It was a slow, deliberate beating. No resisting. No weapon. Just impact after impact until the boy crumpled, his head striking the ground with a sound that made Ethan flinch. Despite having watched it before, the camera caught the whole thing, the officers exchanging quick nods, the way Marcus adjusted his gloves after the final blow. And then, the order, "Clean it up." Within minutes, the comments were a wildfire. "No context in the world justifies that. He lied to the council." "Under oath. Arrest him." By the 30-minute mark, the footage was on every major outlet. By the hour mark, the mayor's office had issued a terse statement. "We are aware of the newly surfaced evidence regarding Captain Hull. An independent investigation will be launched immediately." Rachel was pacing Ethan's apartment, phone in hand. "They can't spin this. Even the union's gone quiet. Ethan sat at the desk, watching the view count spike in real time. Quiet doesn't mean they're giving up, he said. It means they're deciding how hard to hit back. Rachel stopped pacing. Then we make sure they can't hit just you. Ethan glanced at her. What are you thinking? I'm thinking, she said slowly. It's time Vos stops being a ghost. It started with a question on a live broadcast. A young reporter, voice trembling with either nerves or adrenaline, asked the one thing no one else had dared. Captain Holly, can you confirm whether Detective Marin Vos had any involvement in recording or releasing this footage? The press scrum froze. Hale's jaw tightened, just for a beat, and then the smile slid into place. I can't speak to rumors, he said smoothly. But I will say this. Anyone within the department who engages in unlawful leaks should expect the full weight of the law, no exceptions. Rachel muted the TV. He knows. Ethan was already dialing. Vos picked up on the second ring. You need to get out, Ethan said. I'm not running, she replied. That's exactly what he wants, to make me look guilty by disappearing. He's going to make you the scapegoat, Ethan said. They'll drag your name through the mud, pull every file you've ever touched, twist it until you're the one on trial. Vos's voice was steady, but there was steel under it. I've survived worse. And if I go down for telling the truth, so be it. But if I stay quiet now, he wins twice. Rachel cut in from across the room, loud enough for Vos to hear through the speaker. Then at least stand next to us when this storm hits. You disappear into the background. They'll write the narrative for you. There was a pause. Then, Vos said, tomorrow morning. The steps of City Hall. We stand together. Ethan hung up and leaned back, the weight in his chest heavier than relief. She's putting a target on her back the size of this city. Rachel met his eyes. We all already have one. The air outside City Hall was crisp, the kind that made every exhale a pale ghost in the morning light. By 9:15 a.m., the steps were packed, reporters, camera crews. Clusters of curious onlookers pressed shoulder to shoulder. Ethan stood to Vos's right, Rachel to his left. The detective's plain black coat blended with the crowd, but her posture cut through it. Upright, unyielding, hands clasped behind her back like she was on parade. When the microphones were set, Vos stepped forward. My name is Detective Marin Vos, she began, voice clear enough to carry without the speakers. And yes, I am the source who provided the uncut footage of Captain Marcus Hale's actions in Central Park. I did so because truth should not be a casualty of power. The crowd rippled. Some clapped, others shouted. The shutters of cameras snapped like insects. Vos continued. This city deserves to see its protectors as they truly are, not as they are polished to appear. Captain Hale lied under oath. He committed violence against an unarmed citizen, and the system built to hold him accountable has failed. She hadn't finished when a low murmur swept the crowd. Heads turned toward the street. An unmarked black SUV rolled up to the curb. The back door opened, and Marcus stepped out. No uniform. Dark suit. Sunglasses that hid his eyes but not the smirk tugging at his mouth. He didn't head for the microphones. He walked straight toward them. The press surged forward, sensing blood. Detective Vos, Marcus said, his voice pitched just loud enough. For the cameras, bold move. But you left out the part where you were under internal investigation before this footage ever surfaced. Care to explain that? The crowd erupted into overlapping shouts, half demanding answers from Vos, half jeering at Marcus. Ethan stepped forward, planting himself between them. She's not the one on trial here. Marcus tilted his head, smile sharpening. Oh, Ethan, you still think you're playing chess. But you're standing on a board I built. The noise on the steps surged like a tide. Microphones were shoved forward, reporters barking questions over each other. Detective Vos, is it true you were under investigation? Captain Hale, Do you have proof of misconduct by Detective Voss? Ethan Cross, are you being paid to leak this footage? Voss held her ground, but Ethan could see the tension in her jaw. Rachel tried to call for order, but the cameras had already locked onto the juiciest angle, Holly in crisp black, smiling like the devil, and Voss staring him down. Marcus spread his hands, the picture of calm. I'm not here to litigate Detective Voss's record in the press. But transparency works both ways, doesn't it? If the public wants the truth, they should have all of it. The implication hung there like smoke. Voss finally spoke, her voice even, but colder now. An internal review isn't proof of wrongdoing. You know that. But if you're going to drag my name, do it with facts, not innuendo. Marcus's smile didn't move, but his sunglasses tilted just enough to reveal his eyes, sharp, locked on Ethan. Ideal in reality, Cross. You should try it sometime. Before Ethan could answer, Marcus turned and walked back to the SUV. No hurry, no stumble. Just leaving the grenade behind. The questions from the press pivoted instantly, not to Hale's violence, but to Voss's past. Rachel muttered under her breath, he just bought himself another week of distraction. Ethan's hands curled into fists. Then we cut that week down to hours. Rachel shot him a wary look. How? By finding out exactly what he thinks he's got on her. Ethan said, and making it blow up in his face instead. The file wasn't supposed to exist outside internal affairs servers. But Rachel's contact, a retired systems analyst with a grudge, got them a backdoor link that spat out a grainy PDF stamped confidential. Ethan scrolled past the boilerplate until the first flagged incident caught his eye. Date, 8 years ago. Subject, Detective Marin Voss. Summary, failure to follow direct order during joint operation with Captain Marcus Halle. Rachel leaned over his shoulder. Joint operation? So they've known each other that long? Ethan skimmed the details. The op had been a high-risk warrant service. Voss had pulled a civilian woman out of the target building before the all-clear, disobeying Hale's command to hold position. The woman turned out to be an undocumented witness to a police beating. Voss had been written up for insubordination. Hale's career had climbed. Hers had stalled. Here, Ethan said, tapping the page. This isn't dirt on her, it's dirt on him. She saved someone he was trying to keep boxed in. Rachel's grin was sharp. So when he accuses her of misconduct, we show the pattern, Ethan finished. He silences anyone who crosses him. She's not the first. But the file held more. Near the bottom was an unsigned memo, no date, no author. Subject remains a liability. Recommend monitoring for potential whistleblower behavior. Rachel's face hardened. He's been watching her for years. Ethan closed the file. Then we show everyone just how far back this goes. And we don't wait for him to strike. We hit first. The press conference wasn't announced. It hit the news feeds like a flare. Detective Voss and civilian whistleblower Ethan Cross to address media. 2 p.m., same City Hall steps. They stepped into the daylight. The crowd was smaller than the chaos of last time, but every lens was aimed at them. Rachel held the file folder like it was evidence in a murder trial. Ethan took the mic first. Last week, Captain Halle tried to discredit Detective Voss by hinting at an old investigation. What he didn't say is what that investigation was really about. He handed the mic to Voss. She didn't unfold the papers yet, just met the crowd with steady eyes. 8 years ago, she began, I was ordered to hold position during a raid. I didn't. I went into that building because I heard a woman screaming. The camera zoomed in as she pulled a single photograph from the folder, a faded still from a body cam. This is the woman I pulled out. She was an eyewitness to an assault by off-duty officers. Captain Hale's command would have left her trapped, undocumented, and vulnerable to retaliation. I made a choice to protect her. For that, I was written up. My career stalled. His advanced. Ethan stepped forward again. Captain Hawley says transparency works both ways. We agree. That's why this file is now public. Every page, every signature, including the internal memo labeling Detective Voss as a liability for telling the truth. A low murmur rolled through the crowd. Rachel slid USB drives into the hands of waiting reporters. Full document set, no redactions. By the time they stepped away from the podium, the first headlines were already breaking. Hawley targeted whistleblower for years. Pattern of retaliation emerges in Hawley misconduct case. Voss glanced at Ethan. You just painted a target on yourself twice as big. Ethan smiled grimly. Good. Makes it harder for him to miss when he takes his last shot. Marcus watched the live stream from his office, blinds drawn against the afternoon sun. The moment Ethan held up that file, his jaw had locked so hard the muscle twitched. By the time Voss showed the photograph, his knuckles were white against the armrest. They think they can bury me with half a story, he said. His aide, a wiry man in a tailored suit, stayed silent. Marcus stood, pacing once, then stopping abruptly. Set it up. The aide hesitated. Sir, you mean? Yes. Marcus's voice was ice. We pull everything. Phone records, bank statements, every contact they've had in the last 3 months. I want dirt. And if it's not there, we make it. That night, Ethan's apartment felt colder, though the heat was on. Rachel sat cross-legged on the couch, scrolling her phone. Someone's in the system, she said without looking up. Your email just pinged from an IP that isn't yours. Before Ethan could respond, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Thought you'd like to see the company you keep. Attached was a blurred image, him and Voss at the press conference, but altered. The photo now showed a thick manila envelope in Voss's hand, labeled payment. Rachel's eyes narrowed. They're building a narrative that you're both on someone's payroll. Ethan exhaled slowly. He's going to frame us before the investigation can bury him. Rachel set her phone down. Then we need to end this tomorrow. No more press conferences, no more leaks. We take it straight to the people who can put him in cuffs. Ethan met her gaze. The day? No, she said. Bigger, federal. It was still dark when they loaded the evidence into Rachel's battered hatchback. 2 encrypted drives, the original uncut footage, and the complete EA file on Marcus. Voss sat in the back, a plain duffel on her lap, eyes scanning the quiet street. DC field office opens at 9, Rachel said, pulling into the empty avenue. We get there before lunch. They get the whole package before he knows we're gone. Ethan checked the rear view. A black SUV slid into the lane behind them. Rachel, he said quietly. I see it, she replied. The SUV followed through. 3 turns, then pulled closer. The morning traffic was too light for coincidence. Voss shifted in her seat. It's him. Rachel pressed harder on the gas, but the SUV matched them. The driver's window lowered just enough for Ethan to catch a flash of sunglasses, and a smile he'd seen on City Hall steps. Marcus. Rachel swung the car into a side street, tires squealing. The SUV accelerated, cutting the angle, forcing them toward the chain-link fence at the dead end. Ethan grabbed the duffel from Voss. Go! He barked. They bolted out opposite doors, splitting the load, 1 drive in Ethan's jacket, 1 in Rachel's backpack. Marcus stepped out of the SUV, calm as if he'd just arrived for coffee. You really think you can walk into a federal office with that crap and not end up in cuffs yourselves? Voss's hand hovered near her coat. No gun, but the stance alone was a warning. Get out of our way, Hawley. He took a slow step forward. Or what? You'll leak another file? I've survived worse storms than you 3 put together. Ethan felt the weight of the drive in his pocket. Then maybe you've never been hit by the right one. The street was narrow, boxed in by brick warehouses, the kind of place sound doesn't escape. It bounces back at you. Sharper. Marcus took another step toward Ethan, his voice low but carrying. You think this is about truth? This is about survival. And I've been surviving in this city longer than you've been breathing clean air. Rachel shifted, angling so her backpack was away from him. Survival's a funny word for someone whose career's circling the drain. A flicker in his expression. Brief, but there. Then the aide from the SUV emerged, holding a slim black case. Marcus didn't look back, just extended a hand. Ethan's mind was already running the angles when the sound of sirens cut through the air. Not city patrol, the sharper, faster wail of federal intercept units. Marcus froze. 2 black sedans slid into the mouth of the street, blocking the SUV's exit. Agents in dark windbreakers poured out, sidearms ready. Captain Marcus Hawley. One called out, "Step away from them and place your hands where we can see them." For the first time since this began, Ethan saw something new in Marcus's face. Not anger, not calculation. Just the barest edge of disbelief. Vos stepped forward, holding the duffel high. Evidence, unaltered. You might want to treat it like gold. An agent took it from her, another moving to pat Marcus down. The captain didn't resist, but his eyes stayed locked on Ethan. This isn't over, he said quietly as they cuffed him. Ethan met his gaze without blinking. You're right. It's just not your game anymore. By the time they reached the federal field office, the sky had cleared into a cold, pale blue. The drives, the footage, the EA files, all were logged into evidence under chain of custody. Agents thanked them, promised updates, but Ethan knew better than to believe in quick resolutions. Outside, Voss leaned against the hood of Rachel's car, the winter light catching the lines at the corners of her eyes. You know they'll try to bury it anyway, she said. Rachel zipped up her jacket. Then we dig it back up. Again and again, if we have to. Ethan glanced down the street, where traffic hummed like nothing had happened. Hale's done, at least. Voss shook her head. One man's gone. The machine stays. For a long moment, they stood there in the cold, the quiet pressing in. Then Ethan's phone buzzed, no name, just a number he didn't recognize. He answered, a voice, low and even. You've made enemies you can't see yet. But some of us are glad you did. The line went dead. Rachel raised an eyebrow. Friend or threat? Ethan slid the phone back into his pocket. Both maybe. They got into the car, pulling away from the curb. In the mirror, City Hall's spire cut against the sky, sharp as a blade. Somewhere behind those walls, someone was already planning the next move. And somewhere deep in his chest, Ethan felt the same truth Vos had warned him about on the first day, that justice wasn't the finish line. It was a road, and he just started walking it. The streets didn't change that day. The city didn't suddenly become just. But one man took the first step, and sometimes, that's enough to start a chain that can't be stopped. The road to justice is long. And Ethan is still walking it. If you want to walk it with him, hit that subscribe button, and stay with us for the next story that demands to be told.